Hello there, people of the internet, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really quick and easy tutorial for all of you. What we're going to do today is make dotted grid paper for in your planner to use for bullet journaling or really whatever you would like. I really like dotted grid paper because it is very versatile. The dots help you write in a straight line, just as if you were using standard lined paper, but it's much more versatile because it's not a solid line. You can use them to write straight lines horizontally, or you can use them to make little squares and use it as graph paper. There's just a lot of different uses, and I've really been enjoying using them. For this tutorial, we'll be using Apache OpenOffice, and the reason that I chose this program is because it's free and open source. So the technique I'm going to show you today, you can definitely use in many other programs, such as Microsoft Word or Photoshop. However, those programs cost money, and I know not everyone has them. So for this tutorial, we're using OpenOffice because anyone can go to the Apache OpenOffice website and download the exact same version that I'm using here so that you can follow along exactly. So I'll leave the link to Apache OpenOffice in the description box below. So without further ado, I'll just jump right into the tutorial. The first thing that we'll want to do is open OpenOffice and click on Drawing so we create a new drawing. Next, what we'll do is go up to the top corner into Format and format the page. When we click this, we have this nice little pop-up, and we're going to change a few options on this menu. The first thing that we'll want to change is the format. For most Americans, letter is the standard 8.5 by 11 paper that we're all familiar with. This is what we'll be using for the tutorial just because most people will have this letter size around their house. That being said, don't forget that a half letter is not the same size as an A5 page. If you take a standard 8.5 by 11 paper and cut it in half, it will not be the exact same size as the A5 inserts that you might get that are true A5 size. They'll be a little taller and a little skinnier. If you enjoy printables and use them a lot and you have an A5 planner, then I definitely recommend actually buying some A4 pages. An A4, when cut in half, yields 2 exact A5 pages. So, like I said, if you do a lot of printables and a lot of pages yourself, I would highly recommend trying to get some A4 paper so you can have true A5 pages for your planner. But like I said, for this tutorial, we'll be using the standard letter because it is definitely more common and I know a lot of people still use them. The next thing that we'll be changing is the orientation. It defaults to portrait, which is up and down. However, we want to make it landscape, which is side to side. And the last thing that we'll want to change on this menu are the margins. In most word processing programs, the margins are defaulted to a fairly large size. And the reason for this is that most printers can't print to the edge of the paper. Now, there are some printers that can do borderless printing, which will allow you to print to the edge of the paper. However, most printers can't. So most Word document programs, as I've said, give you way more space than you need. And that results in a lot of wasted space around the edges of your paper, especially when you don't want extra white space around the edges. So what we're going to do is change the margins to make them more narrow. So I'm going to make mine 0.2 inches. And if you know how wide your true margin is on your printer, feel free to make these bigger or smaller to match your own printer. So now that we have all of those selected, we'll just hit OK. And now we have our nice landscape-oriented page with the skinny margins. Now what we want to do is come over here to the properties and create a text box. So we're just going to click on this T for text. And we are going to just create a nice big text box which takes up most of the paper. It doesn't matter if it's not quite perfect because we'll be adjusting this later. What we want to do is just start typing out a bunch of periods. And you'll notice that the first 3 periods turn into a special ellipse character. So what we want to do is just delete that special character and now continue typing a few more of just the standard periods. Once you have a few periods typed out, now would be a good time to decide how big you want the dots on your page to be. By default, OpenOffice goes to 18-point font. which I think is way too big. 12 point is reasonable, but it's still a little large in my opinion. So for my personal tastes, I'm going to be using a 10-point font, and this will just make the periods a lot smaller. Now what we want to do is add distance between the periods, and this is called kerning. Kerning is the distance between letters or characters in text. So OpenOffice makes this really easy to change the kerning of our text. All we have to do is highlight our periods and then come over here to the Properties window again. And under this text tab, you'll see this character spacing dropdown. We just click on this and come down here to the Custom section. And in character spacing, click Expanded so that we expand the distance. And I've found that in OpenOffice in particular, if we make the point difference the same font size that we are using for our text, then it will create perfect squares for us. So because we're using 10-point font, we want to go ahead and change this by 10 points. Now you'll see that we have some nice spacing between our periods. Now because we're going to be making 2 sheets out of this one letter page, we want to make sure we have a gap in the center so that none of our dots get cut off the page. And this will also help it just look more natural because we do have a margin around the edge, so there should also be a margin on the center line where we cut down the page. So what we're going to do is get rid of a few of these periods until we think we have what half of the page looks like. So I'm going to guess that this is half the page worth of periods. So now all we do is copy this section of periods. Then we're just going to put a space and paste our periods onto the page. And now we can be certain that this half has the same number of periods as this half. Now you can see that there's a little bit of extra space on the page over here. So what I'm going to do is just add an extra period to this side and also come back over here and add one more. And now once again we can make sure that we have the same number of periods on each side. The other thing I'm going to do at this point is make sure that we have these dots aligned perfectly so that we are not wasting more space than we need to. So if we just click on this border, I've noticed that you can't resize the text box with these red dots. So if you just click away and then click back, these blue dots appear. Now when you have these blue dots, all you have to do is move them until you have the box the right size that you want. And my goal is to get this period to be as close to the edge as possible. And you can see over here that I have a little bit of extra white space. So to remedy that, I'm actually just going to add another space to the center of the page. And this will just create a little bit more space so that the edges are even. And also you'll notice that now our periods are pretty much centered within the margins. And now that we have one good row, all that's left to do is copy the row and continue pasting them down the rest of the page. And look at this beautiful result and how easy it was. We have these perfect little grids filling the entire page. Now we're almost done, but what we want to do is we still have a bit of white space at the top and the bottom. So once again, I'm just going to resize this so that my dots can get as close to the margins as possible. And you'll see in the bottom I have a little bit of extra space now. So I'm just going to go back in and add one more row to the bottom. Now the one final step that you'll want to do is to change the color of the dots. So even though the dots are really small and look like they won't be too dark on the page, when they're printed in black, it's a bit too harsh. So what I recommend is changing the color of the font to gray. So all you need to do is highlight the entire text box, come over here to the color of the font, and I'm going to choose gray 7, and that will just soften things up a bit. Now all that's left to do is print it out, cut it in half, and we have some beautiful dot grid paper that we can use in our planner. Feel free to play around with different font sizes and colors until you achieve the result that you like. If you found this tutorial helpful, then don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. And of course, if you have any questions, then leave them in the comment box below. Until next time, I'll see you all later.